Hello, Tama. Tonight I would like to talk about sexual temptations and not just for people in a relationship, which mostly there is a case with affairs and cheating and all that, but also with single people. And now I know we live in a society where anything goes. Literally anything goes. So people are like, why do you want to talk about this? Like, who cares? Just do you. Yes, anything goes. That's true. But I don't believe that everything is good for you. And I don't believe that everything is healthy for you as a single person as well as in a relationship. Nowadays, unfortunately, we deal with a lot of cheating, a lot of affairs and things like that in relationships, which is very painful. And there's just a lot of hiding and lying and cheating going on, which is really sad. And I think one of the reasons is because we don't communicate enough. I think communication is the key, as I say over and over and over again. And even about things like that. And it's really hard to say to your partner, hey, I have feelings for this person, or I feel sexually tempted and I just want to sleep with this person or that person. I think it's painful to say, but it's also painful to hear that. Trust me. But I think it's not easy for both sides because we're still human, and sometimes our flesh, as we call it, our body just wants certain things, and we have to learn and train to be disciplined. That's why I think communication is so important, because it will open up a space of trust, even though you can still hurt the person, because no one wants to hear that your partner feels attracted or like sexually attracted to someone else or anything like that. But it's still based on trust, because they're opening up about how they really feel and wanting to work through that with you, if that makes sense. So I think it's very important that we learn to talk about that more. Sexual temptation is a huge topic, again, not just for people in a relationship, but also for singles. Even for singles, it can be a hard thing to do, because a lot of people are looking for a real connection. They're looking for actual deep and unconditional and meaningful love. But oftentimes it's just easier and quicker to have sexual relationships with people without really having to commit and invest. That's why a lot of people, they go that route, but in the end, they feel even more empty than before. What inspired me to do this talk is that I do know that a lot of people are struggling with this. And I think it's, as said, an important thing to talk about. I wish we can just normalize talking about becoming vulnerable, or being vulnerable enough to say, hey, I do have feelings for someone else, or I do feel attracted to them, and like, how can we work through this? Things like that, to just be honest. I'm actually doing a devotional on sexual temptations, and I really loved what today's devotional was saying. So I'm going to read you a little bit and then just explain. This is someone else's story, so it's just random names, okay? Sarah asked, how do I stop wanting to have sex with random guys? I asked her, did you feel better after you had sex with him? She honestly answered, no. Then I asked her to reflect on what she got out of the encounter. I think that's a really important point right there. It's really good to reflect on the past encounters you have had and just think about, what did I get out of it? Not just in the moment. It shouldn't be something that's just in the moment. Yes, it was fun, whatever, but how do you really feel afterwards? Does it help you, or does it prevent you from growing, or prevent you from where you actually want to be? If you're really, really honest with yourself. Was there any moment during which it was satisfying? And then Sarah said, I just wanted to be held and touched. It felt great in the moment to connect to someone, even so briefly. And then I felt disgusting and rejected afterwards. I think that's also another thing. If you do find yourself in those situations where you have sex with a lot of different people, or with some different people, it doesn't matter. But if you find yourself there, and then after you reflect and you're like, it's not actually what I want, it's kind of that void within you that you want to fill. I actually know a lot of people who felt that way. They were looking for a deeper connection, but it's just so much easier and faster to have sex with someone. So they would do that, and then afterwards just feel so bad, because they were longing for this deep connection, and they maybe did feel deeply connected to this person in the moment, but then they also kind of feel rejected and used because this other person is not interested in the same thing. So it can be very, very tricky. That's why I think it's very, very important for us to learn to talk about it and communicate about where we're at and what we need. It goes on in the devotional saying, we live in a world where it's easy to feel isolated, especially as a single person, but not only as single people. I think it's even worse to actually be in a relationship and feel isolated, which a lot of people unfortunately do. You weren't created to live in a small apartment all by yourself, working 60 hours. 60 hours? That's very American. Working 60 hours a week and being entertained by a screen during your free time. You were made for intimacy. I really believe that. We're all made for intimacy, for connection. Whether or not you are married or have children, you need touch. You need to share life with people, and you need to be known. This is something that goes deeper than just like the physical. While our pace of life often destroys intimacy, and that is so true. We oftentimes don't have time for it. We have so much going on, and then when we could have time, we're just so exhausted from everything going on that we're just overwhelmed with all of it. I think a lot of people really are lacking intimacy, and intimacy doesn't necessarily only have to be physical. It's actually physical, spiritual, emotional, mental. It's like all together, but we all need that. It goes on saying, while our pace of life often destroys intimacy, it offers sex as a cheap replacement. That's the problem, I think, for a lot of people. They actually, in reality, they want intimacy, but sex is just faster to get. So people usually go with that. Sarah, such as many other people I know, didn't hook up for sex. She used sex so she could experience a fleeting moment of connection and affirmation. And that's so sad. And I know not everyone can connect to this, but there's a lot of people out there, and there's a lot of people I know that are really longing for that deep connection with someone because they still have natural urges and all that stuff, which we can talk about another time. But it's really hard for them, so they fall into the trap of just having sex with a bunch of random people, or even if it's just that one person. There's a lot of friends with benefits out there with people that actually deeply desire connection, but then they just, as said, go to sex. And I think that's something that I would love for us to talk about more, about our struggles with sexual temptation, about our struggles with anything when it comes to that, and just opening up and being real and saying, hey, look, this is really difficult for me, or hey, I'm dealing with this and this and this kind of temptation or struggle or whatever it is. But I'm just hoping that we can really normalize talking about sexual temptation, about how we feel, what we need, and all that stuff. We should normalize it more because, as said, we do live in a world where people don't want to talk about those things because they don't want to hurt the other person by saying, hey, I actually feel for someone else, feel very attracted to this other person, and I don't want to ruin what we have. And it's just, we're human, but we need to talk about those things because otherwise it's just going to be so much more painful and so much harder to work through that when we just hide those things and we just don't address them. It just makes everything worse. Be able to address it, not just as a couple to prevent cheating and lying and hiding things, affairs and things like that, but also as a single person to learn how to deal with this in a healthy way, especially when you're looking for a deeper connection and then you just run after the physical stuff. And I do believe a lot of people actually they desire to have a deep, meaningful connection with someone where they are known, where they're understood, where they're loved, and not just used for sexual pleasure. A lot of people, I think, also don't confront themselves. Sometimes it's easier for people, A, to just have sex with someone without having to dig deep, and B, I think it's also easier not to address the real desires, because I think people sometimes are scared and don't know what's going to come up if they start digging. But that's why I think it's good to learn to open up about it. Really think about what it is you need, not what it is you just want in the moment, but what it is you need on a long term and not just for that one moment. Because again, I know so many people who just do it in the moment and they're super excited about it and they're so satisfied in the moment, but then afterwards they feel even emptier than before. And I wish that we learn what we really, really, really need so that we can learn to live a healthy way, physically, spiritually, mentally, in our soul and everything. Communication is the key.